Good morning. Happy Friday. Welcome to the 2026 session of Finance, Revenue, and Bonding. We will get started. Mr. Co-Chair, Senator Fonfara, you have any opening comments for us?
Waiting for spring, Madam Chair. Welcome, everybody. Mr. Secretary, congratulations. Looking forward to working with you.
Yeah, I hear it will come fast. So they say. Spring, that is. Mr. Secretary, welcome to the seat. We are all very much looking forward to working with you. We appreciate all the work that you've put in so far. And with that, any other opening remarks from our ranking members? With that, we'll let you get started with the presentation.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I am going to be presenting the governor's fiscal year 27 budget adjustments. We focus this presentation on the revenue items to make it more relevant for the committee. And with that, I will go ahead and dive in. All right. So Governor Lamont is proposing a series of strategic investments focused on education, workforce development, and cost of living relief. These proposals aim to strengthen the programs that matter most to residents, ensure continued fiscal responsibility, and position Connecticut for sustained growth in a rapidly changing economy. The governor's proposals build on historic investments in healthcare, education, housing, and workforce development, continue the state's commitment to affordability, opportunity, and long-term economic resilience. The proposed budget adjustments maintain fiscal discipline while making targeted, meaningful improvements, ensuring that Connecticut remains a place where families thrive and businesses grow. So overall, I want to stress that this proposed budget adjustment is not a major rewrite of enacted spending, but rather a modest refinement on top of a biennial budget that already made major year-over-year investments. You can see here on this slide that total appropriations in relative to the adopted budget were $28.6 billion, and with these recommended adjustments, that rises to $28.7 billion, a change of just $85 million, or about 0.3%. In all, the proposed budget for fiscal year 27 is $1.1 million under the constitutional spending cap. But I do want to highlight that overall these budget adjustments have appropriations that increase 5.7% above the fiscal year 26 appropriations. On the revenue side, general fund revenue is reduced by $242 million as a result of a variety of tax and revenue changes, which will be covered in more detail on future slides. After applying these adjustments and the statutory revenue cap, available general fund revenue is $25.4 billion, leaving the general fund budget in balance by $3.8 million. Overall, the governor is proposing a focused set of revenue policy changes that seek to improve affordability and encourage economic growth while keeping the budget in balance. Before we dive into specific new proposals, I did want to review these revenue adjustments in a broader context, thanks in large part to the state's fiscal discipline over the last several years that has created room for meaningful and sustained tax relief. In fiscal year 27, the governor proposes a revenue package that, when combined with prior tax reductions, so these are things like the enhancement to the earned income tax and the broad-based income tax cut of a few years ago. Combining those things, as well as the proposals in this budget, the total is nearly $1.5 billion in tax relief for Connecticut residents. That means real and meaningful dollars back in the pockets of taxpayers. The proposed revenue policy adjustments in the adjusted fiscal year 2027 budget are summarized on this slide and impact both fiscal year 2026 revenue, which is projected to increase by $43.1 million, and fiscal year 27 revenue, which is projected to be $242.6 million lower than the enacted budget.
Sorry, pause, Mr. Secretary. I'm gathering that we're having a technical issue that CTN is working on, and that those members who are trying to tune into this event on Zoom are being shown an entirely different meeting, which I'm sure is gripping. And maybe they'd rather be watching that, but maybe we will just take a pause. Oh, we're all set. Thank you so much.
Good.
I'm sorry to interrupt your
No,
flow,
no
but wanted to make
worries.
sure everyone had a chance to actually hear. Oh, sorry.
Representative, I'm sorry, just
Yeah.
one more pause.
We'll just take a breath. I don't think we're at the point yet where we all need to get up and stretch, but you know, we'll save that for another day.
We're good.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator, and excuse the interruption. Please continue where you left off.
No worries at all. So I was just highlighting for those at home who are just joining in that this slide gives a summary of the recommended revenue policy initiatives. We'll talk about them a little bit more in depth as we go along. So diving into the specific revenue policy changes, so I want to start by highlighting the governor's proposal to provide broad-based tax relief to working class and middle-income residents and families by providing a tax rebate in the amount of $200 per individual tax filer and $400 for joint tax filers. These payments seek to provide meaningful relief in the face of a spike in energy costs as the state experiences one of the coldest winters on record, and certainly one of the coldest winters we've had in decades. The rebates are to be funded with excess volatile revenue that continues to outperform expectations as a result of a rising stock market. This rebate will be paid to over 1.6 million taxpayers, benefiting more than 2.2 million Connecticut residents. The governor is again proposing to eliminate burdensome professional license fees and renewals. These fees can range anywhere from $65 to $375 per year, depending on the profession. Eliminating these fees will benefit over 160,000 workers and remove an unnecessary burden from working families. And I see we have something blocking the screen here, though I'm not 100% sure how to get rid of it. 1 second. Sorry, trying to see if that's on my screen or not.
We're getting the rust off today.
This is the technology is
firming up all the
us today.
systems.
I think we are back in action. All right, so the enacted biennial budget included a provision to increase hospital taxes by $375 million in fiscal year 2027. The increase was put in place to retain the flexibility to maximize hospital taxes as a revenue source for the state and the hospital industry in the face of some pending tax law changes. The final language of H.R. 1 did not include any hold harmless provisions and instead placed greater restrictions on states' ability to use hospital taxes to generate revenue for hospital payments through Medicaid. The proposed budget adjustments seek to comply with the updated federal law while generating net revenue benefits for both the hospitals and the state. It does this by increasing the hospital tax between fiscal year 26 and 27 by $100 million and increasing supplemental payments to hospitals by $140 million, resulting in a net revenue gain of $40 million for hospitals overall. In addition, the $140 million in supplemental payments leverages a federal match, which provides a net revenue benefit to the state of $53 million. The governor is proposing to expand the state's research and development tax credit to pass-through entities. The research and development tax credit rewards companies for investing in research and development activities here in Connecticut. However, the existing credit is often not available to early-stage high-growth companies. Think biotechs in New Haven or fintechs in Stamford. These companies are generally not organized as corporations and often do not have do not have net profits in any given year. Expanding the R&D tax credit to apply to these firms will encourage more investment right here in Connecticut. This proposal will cap the overall credits at $25 million and $1.5 million per firm per year. It will be refundable, meaning those companies that are not yet turning a profit would still be able to benefit from it if they are making those R&D investments here in the state. This policy has limited impact on general fund revenue, as the majority of the tax reduction will be against estimated and finals revenue, which is a volatile revenue source here in the state of Connecticut. Recent changes to the federal corporate income tax code impact the calculation of our corporation business tax. In particular, there were changes made to the treatment of research and experimental expenditures, which are now eligible for immediate deduction. Prior federal law required these deductions to be spread out over 5 years. In response, the governor proposes to conform to the federal changes and allow the immediate deduction of these expenses starting in 2026. This will keep the state competitive for our knowledge-based economy. However, to avoid a sizable impact in our fiscal year 27 revenue, the governor proposes to not follow the retroactive portion of the federal changes, meaning those investments made prior to 2026 will continue to be deducted over a 5-year period for Connecticut tax purposes. Changes were also made to bonus depreciation for qualified production property. Federal law now allows for the immediate deduction of capital expenditures for real property used in the manufacturing of production process, instead of spreading those deductions out over a 39-year period. Notably, this only applies to real property constructed between January 20th, 2025 and December 31st, 2028. Consistent with Connecticut's treatment of other bonus depreciation for decades, the governor proposes to decouple from this new bonus depreciation and retain our 39-year deduction period. Two other items I wanted to draw your attention to are both efforts to increase the deposit into the early childhood education endowment. The first is to reduce the revenue transfer from the general fund to the municipal revenue sharing fund by $13.1 million in fiscal year 26. This can be done because the municipal revenue sharing fund is partially funded through deposits of the sales tax. Those sales tax receipts were higher than anticipated, and so the general fund transfer that's required to meet this fund's obligations is lower. In addition, we are proposing to reduce the transfer of fiscal year 26 revenue that is proposed to be transferred to 27 by $30 million. What that will do is increase the fiscal year 26 budget surplus by that $30 million. In both cases, what we are seeking to do is increase the deposit into the early childhood endowment. So combined, those will result in an enhanced deposit to the endowment of $43.1 million. On the expenditure side of the ledger, the general fund budget revisions include $73.2 million in adjustments to reflect increased costs to continue current services, as well as $67.7 million in policy expansions, partially offset by $33.3 million in policy reductions. For the Special Transportation Fund, there's a reduction of $14.7 million in adjustments and $2.5 million in policy expansion proposals. These mild adjustments build upon the significant investments that are already included in the adopted biennial budget. This slide provides a high-level overview of some of the major changes that went into our general fund adjusted recommendations. So just highlighting a couple of these, there was adjustments to current services to cover revised estimates for operating requirements in certain agencies. You can see some of them called out here on the slide, including DESP, Department of Housing, our CTEX, the Department of Corrections, and Judicial, which are all running higher level costs than anticipated, and that's projected to continue into 27. We did have some updates to our OSC pension and healthcare estimates, which were added into the budget. We are also looking to cover some additional debt service for Yukon 2000 debt that is associated directly with the purchase of Waterbury Hospital. In addition, the governor is proposing to add funding to provide universal free breakfast to ensure all students can start the day with a full meal, no questions asked. We're also providing some dollars to expand the number of districts with access to school-based mental health services. This was a COVID-era pilot that resulted in meaningful reductions in behavioral health incidents and suspensions in districts as varied as Norwalk and Killingly. The governor is also proposing to combat lagging reading scores by introducing a statewide network of literacy coaches based on a successful program initially launched in Mississippi, which after its implementation, that state is now the state with the highest reading scores when you adjust for demographic factors. Moreover, that success of the program has been replicable in other states. The governor is also looking to provide free bus fare for veterans. These are dollars that would be given to the Department of Veterans Affairs so that they could offer free bus passes to veterans who can leverage that new benefit. Go ahead and go to the next slide. On the Special Transportation Fund side, we have a variety of adjustments to our spending as well. We are looking at increased current services on bus and rail, where those operations and insurance costs are running above projections. So we have $30 million there. We also have the same update to our healthcare estimates that you saw on the last slide, but that's impacting the Special Transportation Fund. We are looking to provide funding for reduced bus fares for students and veterans. So this would be a 50% reduction for those populations. And then we do have some negative reductions with lower than expected debt service requirements that we are projecting in this fund. In total, we're looking at a reduction of total appropriations of $12.2 million for the Special Transportation Fund. In terms of municipal aid, the budget adjustments make no changes to the existing statutory formulas included in the underlying budget and continue to provide significant resources and support for our local municipalities and boards of education. Moving to the capital budget. On the capital budget side, the fiscal year 27 budget includes $5.7 billion in overall new authorizations across transportation, education, economic development, infrastructure, and housing. The proposed capital adjustments that we are offering include a new authorization for a new Wyndham Technical High School. We have some increased school construction. There's a couple of priority state government buildings we are adding into the authorizations. We also have $10 million in security upgrades at the Department of Corrections, as well as $10 million for Grad Plus subsidized loans. This is a program that seeks to substitute for some lost federal support in this area. This would be run by Chesla. Finally, we have $1.5 million to enhance the state's ability to monitor extreme weather through a Mesonet system. That information would generally be used by our public safety folks. In addition, the underlying budget made significant authorizations or new bonding authorizations in the area of affordable housing, electricity, local services, infrastructure and resilience, economic development, education, and childcare. A quick call out on housing funding here. Bond funded housing authorizations, affordable unit constructions, first time homebuyer assistance, and renovations have tripled over the last 4 years compared to prior levels. This is a reflection of the shared commitment of the legislator and Governor Lamont to expanding housing stock and improving affordability. So in conclusion, this budget is balanced. It complies with all constitutional and statutory fiscal guardrails and requirements. As a result of the state's commitment to fiscal responsibility, the state is positioned to respond to actions at the federal level while still providing meaningful tax rebates. Significant affordability initiatives are proposed, including investments in K-12 education, early childhood, housing, healthcare, and our social service safety net. The governor's budget continues the progress towards making Connecticut a more desirable place to live and work. I thank the committee for having me here today and look forward to questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And as I said before, for all the many hours of work it took to get there and prepare these. I know we're all, at least those of us on this committee, were anxious to start chewing on the details. We will have the usual 2-question limit from my colleagues for questions, and I will just start off with one area that I think will be a major area of discussion this year, which is the hospital provider tax. And so I'm going to ask you to expound a little bit on some of those numbers because, as you know, to understate it, the Hospital Association has not agreed to this and takes different position on the financial health of our hospitals and how we ought to be responding to that. And so I know that I certainly and all the members of this committee will be hearing from their hospitals about that. And I think it will behoove all of us to have really good information on how this works and what the status of negotiations are, and what the reality of of what is in this, what was in our budget that we passed last year and what is in this adjustment to the budget. So I guess I want to first just, I'll let you provide a little further information, but the two numbers that or three numbers, I guess, that are being tossed around that would be good for people to have better understanding of. The hospitals are, note that the 100 million is a cost that we're imposing on them. It's a tax we're imposing on them, and that's the number. They're one of the numbers they are fixated on. To the $40 million net profit, not profit, but benefit to hospitals because they're receiving 140 million in payments while paying 100 million in tax. That's some of that is sort of pre-allocated and there are some issues there. And also just a little bit more information on the 53.8 net benefit to the state and where that number comes from. That was a big question. So thank you.
Right. I will do my best, Chairwoman, to talk through this, and it may be helpful, if you want to ask follow-up questions or the committee has follow-up questions. I think the hospital tax is a confusing mechanism. So let me just maybe start by further defining the hospital tax, what it is, what it's used for, et cetera. The federal government does allow for Medicaid to make supplemental payments to hospitals to reimburse them for the costs of providing services to Medicaid enrollees. One of the ways that states, and we are not the only state that does this, the vast majority of states do, fund their ability to provide those supplemental payments to hospitals is by putting a tax on the hospitals themselves. That tax is then utilized as a revenue source to fund the state's share of giving hospitals a supplemental payment. When the state provides a supplemental payment, as with anything else in Medicaid, there's a portion of that payment to the hospitals that is incurred by the state, and then there is a federal match that is included as well. So for every dollar that is given to the hospitals, generally you can think of about 43 cents is spent out of state dollars and about 67 cents is reimbursed by the federal government. So that'll give you sort of a general breakdown. So in terms of what we are proposing, I want to sort of start with what the current state is, and the current state for hospitals and the hospital tax. They've been under a settlement for that goes back to, I think, is it 2017? 2019? 2019. Trying not to misquote. Since there was a settlement that went into place in 2019 that predetermined what the amount was that what the tax amount was that the hospitals needed to pay, and how much they would get paid back in supplemental payments. It also required that the state increase Medicaid rates at a certain amount each year. That settlement expires in fiscal year 27. So this is the first time that any changes can be made to that underlying agreement. So what we are proposing is to take what the hospitals were paying in taxes last year and add $100 million to that and say you have to pay $100 million more than you were paying last year. To offset that, we are saying we are going to give the hospitals $140 million in these allowable supplemental payments. I want to highlight that under federal law, when you tax hospitals and then pay dollars back out, you can't pay the same hospital dollar for dollar, meaning that if a hospital gives you $10 in taxes you can't pay them back the exact same amount, $10 in supplemental rebates. There has to be some variation across the hospitals. Essentially, you need a different mechanism for calculating the payments versus the mechanism and formula you use to calculate calculate the tax payments versus the formula and mechanism you'd use to calculate the supplemental payments. So they have to be different. And I mentioned that because this differential of this $40 million differential was what we determined was necessary to ensure that when we pay back the hospitals, that there would be no individual system, that would be a net loser relative to the position they were in fiscal year 26, meaning that each hospital system would receive more total revenue from the supplemental payments in fiscal year 27, even after subtracting out the additional dollars they had to pay in taxes, than what they experienced in 26. So everybody net winners, right? So that was the goal. That's what we want to make sure that we put into this initial budget, making sure that hospitals are no worse off. Now, I recognize that the hospitals have identified that they have financial needs, and their financial needs are greater than what we, or they state that their financial needs are greater than what we are proposing here. But I do want to highlight that it was our goal to ensure that not a single hospital would be, in a negative position relative to where they are in fiscal year 26. The other thing I will mention, because the hospitals will mention it, and I want to be open and transparent with all of you, is that the total that is going back to the hospitals who are currently in the financial settlement and those in CHA and will be in CHA moving forward, is really, they will say it's more around $25 million. They'll say it's not actually $40 million. The reason why they'll say that is because there is $15 million of this cost that will be associated with Waterbury Hospital. Waterbury Hospital will now be associated through an agreement, a joint venture agreement with UConn Health, and what we wanted to avoid was having Waterbury pay this tax moving forward, because if we did under the current scenario, we would essentially be paying ourselves, and there'd be some challenges in doing that. So Waterbury Hospital is exempt from paying the tax, but they do continue to get supplemental payments as they have in the past. So that takes up $15 million worth of room. It ends up being a $25 million benefit to the remaining hospitals. Every one of those hospitals, it ends up a net winner relative to where they are in 26. So that was a very long explanation of a very confusing topic, and I apologize if I confused anyone more than the place that we started.
I thank you. My question was quite a long question.
Yeah.
I think I brought this on us. I will open it up I'm going to start with people in the room and start with the good ranking member, Representative Paletta.
Good morning, Secretary. I'm confused on a lot of things.
So don't feel bad now.
First of all, thank you for that presentation, and thank you for meeting with the leaders of the committee last week. It's definitely a breath of fresh air to have all these information in front of us and to digest on behalf of the governor. During our meeting last week, and I'll just ask it again today because I think it's going to be a central focal point for the legislature as a whole over the next 12 weeks, and that's regarding the $500 million for the $200 rebate checks. I think I can say with certainty that we all agree that broad-based tax relief is needed. I think that, my side of the aisle may feel that there's some structural changes that are needed to achieve that. So this may not be the avenue, but I certainly want to explore it and understand it a little bit more. But my question was mainly focused around where the money will come from, which I know we know, but if you could just expound on that a little bit. And then also what it would do on the back end of the budget in terms of our 8X savings. We had, and I'll just, before I finish and let you speak, had a lot of conversation around that savings, the 8X savings. And I know that we've realized that savings in our budget for the last several years, especially seeing, the savings that we've had since the bipartisan budget was enacted. Now, we haven't really indexed it. We haven't totaled it up. I'm sure there is a total. And some people say it's around 500 million total since 2017. I don't know the exact number. But I'm just a little concerned that will be brought down if we spend this money as a one-time, payout. So if you could just talk about where the money's coming from and how it affects the other side of the budget to clarify for people. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative. So I'd be happy to do that. So the money is coming from our volatile revenue sources. And so these are estimated and finals taxes and our pass-through entity tax. As folks may remember, we have a volatility cap or threshold that any dollar amount of those taxes that comes in over our threshold is directed towards our budget reserve fund. Our budget reserve fund is required to be 18% of appropriations, and when we exceed that 18% of appropriations, it waterfalls, those additional dollars waterfall into paying off our long-term unfunded liabilities, generally that historically has been our SERS and TERS, are state employee retirement and teachers retirement programs, which have large unfunded liabilities. Over the years, we paid off about $10 billion in unfunded liability through this mechanism. And Representative, to your point, I think we calculate it as being saving about $800 million in every year underneath the spending cap and dollars that are available to go towards other programs that would have otherwise had to go towards our unfunded liability. So it has been an extraordinary benefit to the state and taken us from a place where we were in significantly financially challenged, and those retirement benefits or unfunded retirement benefits were eating up a larger and larger portion of our budget every year. We are in the enviable position because we have those guardrails in place, and because the stock market is performing so well, we are seeing a really high projection in terms of what we expect to receive from those volatile revenue sources this year. We are projecting about close to $1.6 billion. That would be or I guess $1.8 billion would be over the threshold. It's going to take about $200 million to fill back up the budget reserve fund to 18%, because the 18% grows every year as the budget grows every year. And so that would leave us somewhere around $1.6 billion, right, that would otherwise go towards those unfunded liabilities. What the governor is proposing is to say, hey, let's take $500 million of those funds, because in this year, we know that we have them. We also have an acute challenge, right, in terms of what we're hearing from residents. As I highlighted, this winter being one of the coldest on record. I think that is true. And as a result, right, that drives up some heating costs that folks may not have otherwise anticipated. A nice way to provide some relief is to say, hey, we have these extra dollars. Let's give them back as a one-time payment to help offset some of those costs that families are facing. The reason to do it in this way is that it does not result in long-term obligations, and therefore, it's something we can afford to do while we know that we have the revenue. Even after doing that $500 million, we still anticipate over $1 billion that would go towards our unfunded liability. And in terms of what that means for future budgets, for every $100 million that we put towards unfunded liability, we open up about $8 million underneath the spending cap in new expenditures that's available to go on towards other programs. So once we put that additional $1 billion towards unfunded liability, we'd expect an $80 million annual savings in reduced payments towards our unfunded liability on our pensions, and that's in each of the next 25 years. That would be added on top of the $800 million that we're already expecting. But to answer your question specifically, Representative, right, we'd be foregoing the ability to reduce our unfunded liability by that 500 million. But we think, given the progress that we've made in recent years on on our pension liability, and the fact that we'll be contributing $1 billion nonetheless, that this is an appropriate and balanced approach.
Thank you. And I think, just correct me if I'm wrong, for every 100 million, it's about 10 million in 8X savings. Is that correct?
About eight.
About 8. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. And our other ranking member, Senator Fazio.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Secretary, for your presentation. To follow on Representative Paletta's, I think, very good question. In your presentation, you've noted the positive effect for taxpayers and state employees of the fiscal guardrails, including the volatility cap. And I think the governor noted them in his remarks to the CBIA the other week. How do you square that with the fact that we are now in this fiscal year or last fiscal year going to see the administration and the legislature increase the volatility cap by $1 billion, and now we have multiple funds that are being spent outside the spending cap, equating to hundreds of millions of dollars, in addition to the fact that last year we broke through the spending cap. So I'm just trying to understand how to square those policies with the assessment that taxpayers and our long-term debt and liabilities have benefited so much from the fiscal guardrails.
Thank you, Senator. So I think everything that I just described just a second ago, in terms of all of those additional contributions towards unfunded liability and the anticipated contribution towards unfunded liability this year, all remain true, even in the context of some of the adjustments that have been made in recent years. I will say that it is the guardrails are important, both for those of us who may care about tax release. They are important for those of us who care about social service spending, or whatever it is that you think is essential in the state of Connecticut. Having these fiscal guardrails in place ensure that anytime we make these decisions, we can sustainably do them, and we're not going to be taking them back year after year. And I think we've seen that over the last several years since they were initially put in place. So I think that is really positive, and the adjustments that have been made in recent years were done so in a way that have retained our continued projected surpluses relative to volatility cap revenue, and so I think we remain in a good place as we move forward.
Thank you. Thank you for your thought process on that. I guess my second question is on the tax rebate. Obviously, the administration's been around and is in its 8th year, and this is kind of a new type of proposal. We've had cold winters and hot summers over the last 8 years, and we have also had money above the volatility cap over the last 8 years. So I'm wondering what became different in this year that makes this proposal appealing, and when do we expect the rebates to go out?
So on the first question, I think there's a real focus the governor has in this budget, and you can see it throughout the proposals on affordability, right? What can we do for residents to make things a little bit more affordable in the face of some rising costs? So this is one additional item that we think kind of meets that challenge and meets that demand that we're hearing from residents. So I think that is the reason why this is being posed at the time that it is. The proposal, as required, would require those funds to go out at least by October 1st.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Representative McGee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Secretary, for being here with us. A lot of helpful and useful information. I have two questions. If I was hearing correctly, did you say that free breakfast has reduced suspension rates? Like it has been an actual impact on what's reduced suspension rates?
No, so thank you, Representative. I was actually referring to two different programs that the governor is proposing. So one is free breakfast for everyone, right? Just no questions asked. Everybody starts the meal with a good, a solid breakfast. We think that's meaningful for the entirety of the population. The second piece was actually expanding a COVID era pilot program where we have put in place in 7 districts behavioral health clinics within certain schools. And those clinics have shown significant improvements right in those suspension rates
Right.
and behavioral incidents. And what we'd be looking to do is expand that from 7 districts today out to 20 districts.
Thank you. So I asked because I'm an educator and I see firsthand the implications of a student not eating breakfast or having breakfast, and a student who does eat breakfast, but receiving the opportunity to travel around at many different schools. There are schools who haven't gotten a chance to really benefit from that program. And so as great as we can expand it to make it more equitable to schools everywhere, I would see not only suspension rates decrease, but a greater appetite for learning in classrooms. And my second question is, the VA hospital is in my district, and so I always receive calls as it pertains to transportation. Is there a policy in place that equitably distributes funds for veterans transportations, or is it specifically just in the hands of the Department of Veterans Affairs, and they then distribute to wherever the need is specifically for veterans who need to get around the state?
One moment, Mr. Secretary. Sorry, I'm going to step in just to say these are excellent questions, but they do pertain to the other side of the ledger, the appropriations side of this. And so I know the Secretary is perfectly capable of answering these questions because he answered many of them yesterday. And so please finish this one, but moving
Thank you.
forward,
Thank
let's
you.
try to stay on our side of the ledger.
Yep.
Thank you.
Representative, I'll answer it 2 ways, and I'll start with the revenue side of the ledger. And that we're offering 2 proposals. One is to reduce by half the bus fares that are charged to veterans and students, meaning that if they get on the bus, right, they would actually have to pay less. And so that will impact every veteran who gets on a bus and can show that they are a veteran. The second thing we're proposing is to give dollars to the Department of Veterans Affairs so that any veteran in the state who is interested in having a free bus fare, right, could apply to the Department of Veterans Affairs and get that free bus pass. So it wouldn't be limited. It wouldn't be limited to a certain geographic area. The concept and idea is that it would be available to any veteran.
Thank you for answering my questions. Thank you, Madam Chair. There's sometimes that little fine line between a finance and a probe. So thank you. I appreciate it.
I get it. We experience that all the time, and you had the benefit of going first, so you got it in there. Any other questions from people in the room? Representative Baumgartner.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and congratulations on your new role, and very eager and excited to work with you. And it's glad to see someone from Eastern Connecticut in the role, especially. To continue sort of this line of questioning approach versus finance, One fund that obviously has a bit of intersection between both committees is the Mohegan Pequot Fund, which historically Southeastern Connecticut municipalities have relied upon as a revenue source, especially after the two tribally owned casinos were constructed. Those are gaming revenues the state receives. And so my question has to do on the revenue side of the budget with the distribution formula. Many of our municipal CEOs have voiced displeasure or frustration with how the distribution formula has over the years resulted in fewer, actually virtually no increase whatsoever in revenue funds from that fund. So my question is I understand that there was a $1.6 million increase into that fund. How will the distribution, will there be any changes with the distribution formula?
Yeah, thank you for that, Representative. So that $1.6 million is actually a transfer. So there was $1.6 million put into the Office of Policy Management's OE, other expenses line item. And it was for the purpose of paying out grants of $800,000 to to Ledyard and Montville. Thank you. To Ledyard and Montville as an exchange for them no longer being able to charge property taxes on certain properties that are on native lands. And so as a result of that, we did not think that that was the appropriate place for those funds to be within our other expenses line item. We thought it'd be more appropriate for them to be listed within the Pequot Mohegan Fund. And so that is the adjustment, and that's where those funds will be going to.
Thank you for that answer. And my last follow-up question with respect to the capital budget. Obviously, OPM has a very difficult task of weighing the needs of our municipalities, right? As our municipalities make requests for coastal resilience to prevent flooding, of course, and some of to harden our coastline from a lot more of these extreme weather events that we're getting. How does OPM weigh the investments into municipal coastal resilience projects versus state projects on state-owned facilities, as there's obviously a plethora of facilities that need that support as well?
Yeah. No, thank you for that. And, I think, across the capital budget, there are different programs and various authorizations that are made available. I think we do have the benefit of the legislative process to help us direct, right, what is the most valuable and what's most in need relative to communities, whether they be coastal communities or other communities that may have various needs. And so, I think that's sort of our starting point of determination. But I think it's as you highlight, there's no perfect formula for determining priorities once they're already authorized, but there are certainly many needs out there, and we look forward to continuing to work with the legislator to identify what should be funded and where those needs are most.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention you have a really outstanding team that all of us interface with very regularly, and I just want to recognize them as well.
Thank you very much for that. That's been one of the best parts about getting this job is being able to work with the team every day. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Senator Honig.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Secretary, for your presentation. On this Special Transportation Fund section, there's a pretty large reduction in debt service going on. Can you speak to that?
So that was some debt defeasance that was reported to us by the Treasurer's Office during the time that we're putting the budget together. So I think that that is really just related to their debt management and their expectations in terms of what they anticipated the debt costs to be, and what they actually will and what we will actually incur.
Is there some sort of new financial structure that frees up like reserve money that used to need to be around to produce that?
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm gonna have
Hi, Senator Brian Tessner, OPM. So part of the debt savings is a combination of just timing, but also we have moved the transportation fund to it's kind of a similar system as the general fund, where once the cumulative balance hits 18%, we use whatever the excess is to pay off outstanding debt. So we've done about 500 million in 2023, and we've done small amounts since then. And the total reduction has been somewhere in the neighborhood of about 60 to $70 million. So that's what that reflects.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Napoli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Secretary, thank you for being here, and certainly thank you for your presentation. In a very short period of time, you have really hit the ground running, so we look forward to working with you. But last year, the bonding subcommittee worked with our leadership here and the Office of the Governor to establish what's called the Grayfield Program. And for those who may not know, the Grayfield Program is designed to really go after vacant retail space and get that back on tax rolls, and certainly look at affordable housing and market rate housing. And do you suspect perhaps that in the very near future, some of those resources would be available for that program? Thank you.
I think what I could say, representatives, is, we'd be happy to work with you on, what your priorities are in terms of new bonding approval, or authorize allocations as we move forward. But we have not made any determinations as to, what would be on the next bonding agenda. So I don't want to give you a yes or no. It's not something we've made determinations on yet.
Thank you to the good bonding subcommittee chair. I will move now for the moment to those of you online. Representative Farrar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great to see you, Secretary. Thanks for joining us. Great information, great questions from everyone. I did have a couple questions to follow up. I did, again, thank you for the key focus in the presentation, especially on affordability, since it is something we hear from our constituents every day. I did want to ask just a follow-up on the tax rebate proposal. The way this is structured and the way the slides had read was that this would be a rebate for full-year Connecticut residents who filed a personal income tax return for tax year 2024, and then the income limit, you show the income limits. My understanding is that in Connecticut, there are certain folks under a certain income who would not have to file taxes. And so I was just curious how that would work. Are those folks also eligible for the tax rebate? If you could explain a little bit more about that.
So happy to do that. This is something we have been looking at recently as well. So broadly, in the state of Connecticut, those who are still working, right, still have incentive to file a tax return. We do have an earned income tax credit here in the state. So many of our lower income working residents would likely still file, but we do have some scenarios and some groups, lower income folks who are retired and depending on social security, who we are not certain would be covered by this. I think that's an area that would be open to discussing with the legislator as we go through the legislative process and seeing if there's an opportunity for us to resolve that.
Thank you for acknowledging that. I think for all of us, I know in the committee and the legislature, we want to do everything we can to bring down costs, especially in a targeted and a sustainable way for the folks in our communities who need relief the most. So definitely look forward to that work together. Secondly, I wanted to ask, I know you mentioned at the outset a couple suggested transfers in regards to making sure that there was additional contribution to the Early Childhood Endowment Fund, Early Childhood Education Endowment Fund. But I wanted to ask, as a whole in the governor's budget, what is the anticipated contribution for the fiscal year?
Right now, as a whole, we'd be looking at about $130 million in a projected deposit into the endowment. That includes $87 million that we're projecting right now as our end of year surplus. And then that adds in those $43 million of transfers that I'd highlighted earlier in the presentation.
Thank you for that. Thank you for piecing that together. I think this is something very important for all of us to stay collectively engaged on. I know finance approach as a legislature, the governor's leadership, we work so hard on establishing this investment and delivering on the promise of bringing down costs for families and paying providers and educators in 2027 really relies on getting closer to $300 million into the endowment this year. So I hope this is just the start of those continued conversations. So thank you, Secretary, for specifying how those funds are fitting together right now, and look forward to working with you on that. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative. I note just before I go to our next question that there are, as usual, other committee meetings going on at the moment, and I know people are sort of bobbing in and out because they have other obligations. So next up, we have Senator Wong.
Thank you, Madam Chair Horn. I have two questions. Welcome, Secretary Wolchek. Thank you for being here today. As the ranking Senate member of the Transportation Committee and the Special Transportation Fund Bond Subcommittee, I know we talked a little bit earlier about a question, but the fiscal accountability report that was mentioned, that was released, said that the STF would be in the deficit for the next biennium. I know there was a little brief explanation about it, but what options for the STF is the administration looking at to ensure the full funding of the STF now that you have seen that kind of a shortfall? And how would you fund it? Explain what kind of revenue sources are you considering?
Thank you, Senator Wong. I really appreciate that question. That's something that, since the release of that report and the identification of the future challenges in that fund, that we've certainly been focused on at OPM, and the governor is very interested in figuring out, what is the best way to make that fund sustainable moving forward, so that we can make the necessary transportation investments that we need to, and we're able to fund that as we go along. I don't have. I can tell you what we are looking at doing in these fiscal year adjustments is we have made sure that the Special Transportation Fund for fiscal year 27 remains in the black without any challenges. And we were able to work around for this fiscal year. But it's going to require a broader planning process moving forward in order to identify, right, what are the adjustments that are going to be needed to make that fund sustainable over the long term. I don't have the answers for you today, but we are certainly in the process of beginning that analysis and hope to be able to engage those who are interested as we move forward into the future, because it will need to be addressed. We just don't have the answers right now.
Well, I appreciate that. And the Transportation Committee, as well as the subcommittee on the STF, work extremely collaboratively. And I don't think there's a Republican or a Democratic ideology on this. It's about infrastructure commitment. And we have seen when we have kind of a stop and go and uncertainty, it really hurts our ability to initiate and continue a consistency or a maintenance of these kind of critical infrastructure projects. So I want to offer to you, as the Republican ranking member on both of those committees, working with the chairs, that we are committed to working with you to ensure that everything is appropriate and fully funded, and there are no unpredictability. So thank you on that. My second question, the indulgence of the chair, is as also the ranking on the Insurance and Real Estate Committee, and we've worked with the administration on benchmarking, which we will continue to kind of work on and address the concern in regards to the Office of Healthcare Strategy, which will be folded into OPM. That's another conversation for a later day, but addressing unaffordable health insurance rates. So the combination of the federal premium subsidies that are facing cutbacks and the challenge for small businesses and individuals has been a hot topic of conversation. My question is, how does the OPM office view the public option or the Connecticut public option, which the governor's touted, versus the association health plan that we've been working on a bipartisan basis for the past 4 or 5 years, has mechanisms to kind of absorb these kind of healthcare cost shocks? Are there any consideration to that kind of downstream impact when you think about the Connecticut public option on Connecticut insurance market and employment base, particularly after the announcement yesterday of layoffs at CVS and the real economic and sustainability prospects of in-state insurers and jobs and businesses?
Thank you for that question, Senator. So I want to start by saying, healthcare affordability is a primary concern of the governor's. It is in part the reason why I'm sitting before you today. So I want to just specifically address a couple of the ways in which the governor is seeking to impact healthcare affordability in the immediate term. Number one, we're one of the few states that is able to provide some state level subsidies to offset the pullback of the federal government on our Access Health Exchange relative to those subsidies that are available there. And so we are one of the very few states, maybe the only state, I haven't quite looked this up yet, that is seeing an increase in overall enrollment on the exchange from where we were last year. So that's number one. And then number two, within this budget, the governor is looking to provide additional avenues for folks and businesses to be able to support workers in paying for healthcare premiums. And it does that by, and this is a revenue item, so I want to bring it back. It does that by providing a new tax credit for those who are willing to set up an individual health reimbursement account. These accounts are accounts that employers can set up and contribute to. When they do that, then their employees can utilize those funds to go purchase a plan that they would select on the healthcare exchange. We are looking to provide a tax credit in the amount of up to $1,000 per employee per year to match small employer contributions to those accounts. We think that will have a net benefit of bringing more payers into place and more dollars to help offset those potential rising costs, and will be good for small employers as well, allowing them to be more competitive in the benefits that they offer when they're competing for employees. In addition to that, we're also looking to offer new benefit accounts for individuals who are gig workers, and allowing those large companies like DoorDash or Uber to be able to contribute to those health benefit accounts on behalf of their drivers without establishing an employer-employee relationship. There was a pilot in Pennsylvania, and those companies actually did contribute. So again, another avenue where we can add more dollars into the pool to help offset costs. The last piece, as you sort of highlighted, the governor is interested in developing and moving forward with a Connecticut option. I do want to highlight that the Connecticut option, that there's dollars in the budget to be able to study that and for developing the plan. That would be a publicly designed but privately administered plan. So you did mention our health insurance industry and that being an important and key component of our Connecticut economy. Governor recognizes that we are not looking to cut out insurers, but rather work with them in a public-private partnership to create more affordable options.
Well, thank you, Mr. Secretary, and it shows from your work in the controller's office that you have the knowledge and the expertise, and I really wanted to kind of raise that as a point of conversation that I look forward to working with you when you have seen the insurance committee in a bipartisan basis. We try to address the issues and work with the administration. So the fact is, I look forward to have Republicans and Democrats work with the administration and the controller to be able to facilitate and reach solutions. So again, the two questions, and I thank the chair for the indulgence, and I also want to acknowledge that the Commissioner of Transportation has been tremendously helpful in working with us in the transportation and the STF fund. So these are two areas that I'm focused on, along with many others. But thank you for your time and information. And thank you, Madam Chair, for the time.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Rader, did you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to see you, I'm glad you're here. I have a few questions, some about education, some about transportation. So I'll do the education ones first. I'm grateful to see school breakfast is here. I've been working on this for 3+ years, as many here know, in the building, but I'm grateful. But my serious question about it is this. One of the things we had also proposed was to cover the costs for reduced paying students. Is that included in this line, or is this just universal free breakfast? Because what happened was we had it in place and then we took it away for a year. And that hit over 13,000 students across Connecticut. And it's a very small line item. It's in the big picture of $650,000. That's the estimate. Was that not considered here, or is that not included in that number?
We can have a short answer here, Representative Mickey, to this, because it is an appropriations question.
I apologize.
Not a finance question.
I just want to understand again, the intent. Yes. The
As
intent.
we get closer to our
Sorry, yeah.
deadline.
Yeah,
Quite
yeah.
all right.
Yeah. Representative, because I don't want to have a long answer, it may be better for us to take that one offline. But the one thing I will point out is the other component of that proposal is to remove the costs for reduced lunch as well for students who would qualify for that. So there is a second component, but I do have an answer to your specific question.
Thank you. And I'm just grateful to see around the funding for statewide literacy strategy and curriculum, only because we passed a huge bill on special ed last year. And one of those things that comes out of this commission, and we're looking at learning intervention. So I'm just grateful for that. Now, the question around transportation is, I'm asking this to you on behalf of a colleague who had to jump out of the meeting, Senator Cohen, and just wanted to clarify around the bus fare. And I know this is an appropriation, but I just wanted to understand, because we had passed a bill last year to cover for students and seniors to have free bus fares. And so are we adding in veterans? Is that the intention around this? We're not pulling, because we didn't fund that in the budget. We passed the legislation, but we didn't fund it. So is that incorporated into this?
Those dollars are not incorporated and don't envision fully the fully free component for students and seniors. As you mentioned, it wasn't funded. There are also some significant challenges and headwinds that have been presented by the Federal Department of Transportation around what they would find allowable and how it might impact our federal transportation dollars. So that's something we'll have to consider with any a totally free proposal.
So then we are not doing it. I just want to have
That's
clear.
correct.
That's really unfortunate. Okay. That's all, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Any other questions? Seeing at the moment, I have one, I'll recognize myself for the second time. One area that I know that we haven't had a chance to talk about yet, I don't believe, is the occupational license relief here. And I wonder whether you could provide a little bit more detail on how you selected these particular occupations for licensure relief.
So Senator, I think you can see a list there. I think it's a reasonable and comprehensive list of folks who are in our working trades. I wouldn't say. I think the proposal is meant to be broad-based and impact a large proportion of workers who face regular and ongoing licensing and renewal fees. And we think this is just a good way, again, to make things a little bit more affordable and reduce annual costs on a group of folks who have costs that many of us otherwise don't face.
Thank you. Any other questions online here? Seeing none, I thank you for being here and for being continually available to all of us, you and everyone seated behind you. So thank you for your work and for our ongoing conversations.
Thank you so much.